welcome to this podcast. This podcast is about UI UX designers. If you're someone who is inclined towards joining our UI UX design team or someone who's just recently joined our team, then this podcast is a perfect fit for you. Today I have joining with me Pratik, who leads our project management team, Sumit, who's one of our lead UI UX designers, and Sameer, who is heading our consumer and business research division. The topic for today is UI UX and the role of UI UX. Sumit, just to begin, if you can start off with what is it like to be a UI UX designer at Schbang?
So basically, I want to clear that the people want to know what is UI and what is UX. Firstly, they want to know कि presently लोग क्या समझते हैं UI UX is एक ही है, दोनों पार्ट एक ही हैं, but they are totally different. UI is a user interface designer. So basically, people want to know कि UI में खाली graphically काम किया जाता है because they are taking care of banner, buttons and icons and all. So UI is a part of that designing part, not a research part. And UX is the research part, जहाँ पे research की जाती है कि okay the client की satisfaction हो रही है कि नहीं, that user is अगर कुछ वो दे रहा है या तो ई कॉमर्स में इफ़ ही इज़ बाइंग समथिंग तो वो प्रॉपर अकम्प्लिश हो रहा है कि नहीं उसका टास्क. मेजरली द पीपल आर कंफ्यूज बिटवीन द यूआई एंड यूजर. उनको लगता है दोनों पार्ट एक ही है, बट व्हेन ऑन द पिच और ऑन द जॉब इफ वी आर सेइंग कि अच्छा यूज़र रिसर्च कर लो या इसके पार्ट पे देख लो कि व्हाट इज़ ये यूज़र क्यों नहीं बाय कर पा रहे हैं और फ्रॉम दिस प्लेटफॉर्म व्हाई आर वी आर नॉट सेलिंग एट दिस पॉइंट या क्या. तो दे आर सेइंग कि हमको तभी ये नहीं आता बिकॉज दे आर कंफ्यूज बिटवीन यूआई यूएक्स कि उनको पता नहीं है कि यूआई इज़ अ पार्ट जहाँ पे आप खाली डिजाइनिंग फोकस कर सकते हो एंड यूएक्स एक पार्ट है जहाँ पे रिसर्च मेन पार्ट है.
Understood. So what you're trying, you bring up an interesting point. You start off with an interesting point that UI is about crafting that interface. It's about where to place that button, what is the right alignment to keep, what is the right kind of graphic to use, what is the kind of right font to use. And experience is about actually crafting that experience of how when someone clicks on that button, what is the sort of next steps of journeys that a consumer or a user should be taken. If you can just deep dive a little bit upon what are the right kind of skills or what is the right kind of mindset a UI designer need to have, a UX designer need to have, and what does one need to do to attain both these skills while in their journey.
So firstly they have to decide कि उन्होंने पहले ही डिसाइड करना लेना चाहिए कि what they are planning to have कि अगर मेरे को आज ये बनना है, मेरे को UI डिज़ाइनर बनना है तो UI डिज़ाइन में कौन से पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू है. बिकॉज कोई दोनों डिज़ाइनर भी बन सकते हैं, कोई खाली स्पेसिफिक यूआई डिज़ाइनर बन सकता है. एंड यूआई डिज़ाइन में देर मेन फोकस्ड ऑन दैट ग्राफिक एलिमेंट्स एंड द बैनर डिज़ाइन. क्योंकि कभी कभी क्या होता है कोई यूआई डिज़ाइनर यूआई तो बना लेता है बट जो ग्राफिक का काम होता है बेसिकली इफ़ यू आर डूइंग एनी जिफ बैनर्स एंड ऑल तो वो पकड़ नहीं पाता है कि ही इज़ थिंकिंग लाइक कि अच्छा मैं यूआई डिज़ाइनर हूँ पर ये मेरा काम नहीं है. नो इट्स नॉट, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि यूआई एक पार्ट है जहाँ पे पूरा एलिमेंट प्ले करता है एंड यूएक्स एक पार्ट है जहाँ पे रिसर्च कैरी करता है और उसको माइंडसेट पहले ही वहाँ पे पता चल जाता है कि मेरे को यूआई में जाना है या यूएक्स में जाना है. यूएक्स इन द सेंस इट्स मोर अबाउट कम्युनिकेशन कि उसका कम्युनिकेशन सामने से कैसे, बिकॉज अगर उसका कम्युनिकेशन अच्छा नहीं हुआ ना तो यूएक्स में थोड़ा आगे जाने में थोड़ा मुश्किल होता है. आई थिंक समीर नोज लॉट मोर अबाउट यूएक्स. यू कैन एक्सप्लेन अपॉन दैट ऑल्सो.
UX is more about crafting the user experience as a whole and determining what is the best way to craft the entire user journey. And keeping in mind not just elements of the interface but the entire decision making journey and the mindset of the types of users that will be using the product.
So Sumit, you bring up an interesting point for those who have just joined us or for those who are inclined towards joining the UI UX team. It's important not only to know how to design that wireframe but also be able to know what are the kind of right colors, what are the right kind of graphic that needs to be implemented on that specific UI. So someone needs to essentially have an overall understanding of the brand, what is the right kind of tonality that needs to go along with it. And what I hear you say is that while you are being a UI designer, to evolve into also being a UI and a UX designer, you also need to be able to understand at what touch point what is going to happen or what is the kind of interaction the user is going to get through the website, whether it be either through the back end or whether it be through the front end. But a UX needs to look at the overall experience that one is going to get while using that platform, right? Sumit, coming back to you, what are the kind of tools that you advise someone who's joining they should know before joining the UI UX team?
So if they are joining as a UI designer, So they should know about that Figma, Sketch, Zipline for the developer tools. It's a developer tool that you are giving files to the developer, and you should know about InVision. That is a prototype software that if एक design है जहाँ पे हम लोग खाली static design बनाते हैं, but for a क्लाइंट वो समझ नहीं पाता है, उसको एक बड़ा जेपैक लगता है, बट उसको कैसे प्रेजेंट किया जाए, अच्छा ये दिस इज़ अ बटन, यहाँ पे क्लिक पे क्या होता है, तो दीज आर द प्रोटोटाइप सॉफ्टवेयर जो उनको आना चाहिए, बिकॉज इन अ डेली लाइफ क्लाइंट को अगर पता होता UI UX क्या है तो वो हमारे पास नहीं आते, वो खुद ही बना लेते, बट उनको नहीं पता उसके लिए हमारे पास आ रहे हैं. दैट्स वाई दिस टाइप्स ऑफ सॉफ्टवेयर हमको सीखना पड़ता है कि उनको एक्सप्लेन कर सके कि व्हाट टाइप ऑफ डिज़ाइन और कैसे फील आना चाहिए वो डिज़ाइन में. सो फॉर द साइट मैप एंड ऑल दे शुड यूज़ Whimsical. So these are the good software. I think I am using Whimsical, and for design I am using Sketch.
Got it. So starting from scratch, if like someone is building a sitemap, they need to know Whimsical, so that they are able to build out the sitemap and the information architecture, and they're clear on that.
Yeah.
In terms of designing, they should know Figma or a Sketch, or an Adobe XD. Either one of them is good enough. And they should also have a good understanding of prototyping tools, whether that be on Figma or on InVision.
Nope.
It's essential to know that, so that whatever you've designed, you're able to present that through actual experience by allowing your client to click and see what the end output is. In terms of let's get to a bit of the development. Pratik, I'll come back to you a bit on the UI front.
Sure.
In terms of understanding, and there's a question that I get a lot, saying, as a UI designer, should I be knowing how to code, or should I have an understanding of code?
So you
what is your take on that?
So you should have the understanding of the code, because developer के बिना UI designer is nothing, कि वो कुछ भी नहीं है. So from the I am saying best example from the beginning of the project कि developer को include करना चाहिए, because nowadays कि कोई भी client की requirement different types की होती है. If he is coming for a e-commerce website or he is coming for a static website, तो हम UI designer जब भी design करने लगता है तो they have different ideas कि वो कुछ भी कर सकता है. वो बोलता है इमेज को मैनिपुलेट करेंगे, ये करेंगे, बट एट द सेम टाइम टू डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ थे कि डेवलपमेंट हो पाएगी कि नहीं. एंड मेन पॉइंट इज नाउ इज मोबाइल. ऑन मोबाइल इट इज़ रिस्पॉन्सिव होना, बिकॉज अगर वो वेबसाइट रिस्पॉन्सिव नहीं है दैन इट इज़ कम्प्लीटली गॉन, वो अच्छी नहीं चलेगी वेबसाइट. सो देयर आर मेन थिंग्स, क्योंकि डेवलपर एंड डिज़ाइनर शुड वर्क टुगेदर, एंड वहाँ पे उनको ये पार्ट पता होना चाहिए, अच्छा कि इफ़ दोनों साथ में रिसर्च कर रहे हैं तो डेवलपर गाइड भी कर सकता है, अच्छा यू शुड डू यहाँ पे पैरेलैक्स इफेक्ट, यहाँ पे इजीली हो सकता है. ऑन दिस प्लेटफॉर्म, ऑन शॉपिफाई प्लेटफॉर्म हम लोग इजीली सेल कर सकते हैं, यहाँ पे डेटा बिल्ट हो सकती है, बिकॉज दीज काइंड्स ऑफ इन्फॉर्मेशन वो डेवलपर के पास होती है, हमारे पास ज़्यादा तक नहीं होती, बिकॉज वी नो क्या है शॉपिफाई, इतना अंदर डिटेल नहीं पता रहता कि अंदर क्या क्या है. तो अगर साथ में हम लोग काम करें तो लाइफ उसकी भी ईजी हो जाती है और हमारी भी हो जाती है. एट द सेम टाइम दोनों को साथ में नॉलेज रहता है, एंड एट द सेम टाइम बग्स नहीं बहुत कम आता है, बिकॉज अगर इफ यू आर डिजाइनिंग एज ए डिफरेंट प्लेटफॉर्म, अगर मैं अपने हिसाब से डिज़ाइन कर रहा हूँ, वो अपने हिसाब से डेवलपिंग है, देयर आर चांस ऑफ मैनी क्लैशेस होंगे कि आगे चल के पता चलेगा अच्छा दिस इज़ नॉट पॉसिबल एट ऑल. आई थिंक यू हैड मैनी लॉट ऑफ दिस इज़ नॉट पॉसिबल, ये कैसे करेंगे एंड ऑल. सो अगर स्टार्टिंग से ही वो दोनों काम करते आते तो ये आज नहीं होती सिचुएशन.
So it's important for a designer to have a fair basic understanding of how code works, purely so that they can design those responsive websites easily. B, so that whatever creativity they have in terms of designing the website, they're able to do it in the right structure, in the right coding structure. So important to know the 8-grid structure, the 16-grid structure, or the 32-grid structure that's there. Pratik, coming to you, you work, you're sort of the project manager, and your planning, your management sort of makes or breaks the entire project. One of the first things that you do, and this is during the pitching phases as well, one of the key people that you work with are actually the designers. Whether it be the kind of ideas that should be going out, or suggestions on the kind of sitemap that should be created, suggestions on terms of what kind of colors we should be using. According to you, what are the traits that a designer should have when they're joining this UI UX team?
Sure. So I think they really need to be, to start off with, they really need to be clear with their communication. I think that will make sure that they are presenting their ideas easily to you, and they also then able to present that to the client as well. And when a project starts off, I think it's important for us to decide that, okay, this is the approach that we plan on taking, this is the vision that we have in mind, whether it may be the color scheme, it may be references or best practices. So of course, clear communication, you should be curious to explore new things, maybe try a design layout that you haven't done before, and also to understand the brief very well.
You can craft and optimize the entire user journey where it's meeting the goals of the users, and also you can determine what they should feel at each step of the journey. And the kind of control that it gives to UX designers as a result becomes really, really powerful. And it also gives an aligned sense to the entire UX team that what are the real users, how do we empathize with them, how do we set up the entire journey so that it is matching an aligned sense of who are the real people that you're communicating to, so there's no disconnect between the designers on what they think the actual user wants versus what they actually really require.
Got it. So it's more important for the designers to actually be closer to the actual consumers, understand their actual needs, and sort of present that back to the client, so that there is no ambiguity between what I like and you like, and it's actually more keeping the consumer in mind, and whatever experience that you're crafting is actually keeping that consumer in mind, right?
Right. It also aligns the client and the agency that's working on it on an aligned sense of what the real user is. So it eliminates any kind of conflicting notions of who the audience is and who the users are.
Got it. Sumit, if you can just talk us through a little bit about through this process of design, what are the different teams that a designer is usually expected to interact with through this process?
Okay. So I'm talking about team कि कौन सी टीम कौन से टीम से interact करेगी. For example, if he is a UI UX designer, then he should interact with project manager, he should interact with content team, he should interact with photography team if any photography illustration is required, or he should integrate with UX research team, because if there is something going on research on depend upon the research, he can develop the wireframes and all. So there are many teams in the Schbang. So and it depends upon the project. The key what type of project it is, according to that he can connect with the team.
Yeah. Got it. You know, there's some of the best projects that we've worked on, and I can't take the names here right now, but some of the best projects that we've worked on, I've seen that when the UI designer or the designer of the project who's actually set the visual vision, the tonality, sort of set the references in place, is actually key to the entire project when they've been a part of it from start to finish. Not only during the design phases of interacting with the illustrators or interacting with the photographers, but also seeing the project through till the end while working with the developers, looking at the output, seeing whether that output is actually, what the output come out is actually achieved as per what they had expected. So I think it's important that this designer is not only working with the core team initially, with the project manager, but also with the developers, with the QC guys, with the content guys, so that entire project, the way they visualize, they play a key role in how to envision that entire project. Prateek, maybe you want to just talk us through a little bit about the process that is followed at Schbang, right from getting the brief to actually deploying the project.
Sure. So when we get a brief, and what we do is we take the sort of core members of the team. So someone like Sumit and I, we get on call with the client, understand what their requirements are, and then the first step to sort of do is understand the requirements, understand the target audience that we're looking at, understand the objective of the website, or if it may be even a landing page or a microsite, right? Once we do that, we sort of figure out whatever questions we have, we go back to the client with those questions and get those addressed. And then once we're clear with the brief, we've understood everything from all angles, we then go on to sort of closing the brief with the client, closing the sitemap with the client, and then closing the scope. Once that's done and the scope is approved, what we do is we get in all the teams involved. So it may be the design team, the content team, SEO, and development if needed at an initial stage as well. So like you said earlier, it's key to have all the teams on the same page from day one, and that really helps us. So we do that, and then what we do is we start off by collating our assets that we need, the brand colors, the brand fonts, the entire brand language, and the brand book. And that's something that the design team takes over, and then they sort of get into creating a sitemap for the website. Once we have the sitemap in place, we define an information architecture. Now this part is key because what we do is we collate the content that the client has and what they want to show onto the website, and then it's sort of up to us as to how we need to creatively represent it and put it on each of the respective pages. So once we have that information architecture in place, we then get that sign off from the client and head on to a wireframing stage. So the wireframing stage is where someone like Sumit or another designer basically lays out the bare structure of the page and the sections and what we have in mind and the approach that we have in mind. So once that's set and that's in place and that's sort of signed off from the client for the main pages, we then move on to the designs. And the designs is where sort of the UI UX designer brings the wireframes to life. You add your colors, your images, icons, logos, whatever it might be, and sort of take it from there. And what we also do is we basically try and get the content in as well ready for that particular page. Sorry. What that helps us do is it has the images, the icons, the entire look and feel and the content together. So that really gives the client a clear picture of what it is the page is going to look like even once it's developed and ready. And that's sort of broadly from the project closing to the design phase. And then of course our designers support during development as well. We explain the designs to the developers, and once the development is done, we then get the entire website checked and then getting the client's feedback, whatever little there may be, and the final stuff. And then we look and go in live.
Got it. So it's important that the designers also sit with the developers before the development happens and they explain the entire process.
Sorry,
Sure.
Sohil, I think we skipped the one part. Between the information and architecture and wireframe, we are the in between step is the mood board.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. In the mood board, we are explaining about the what type of design you are looking like, that minimalistic designing, or you are looking like a colorful or an interactive design. On the basis of that, we come to know that अच्छा client को ये type की design चाहिए. According to that, we move into the wireframes. वो सबसे वो flow चलता है. Yeah.
Understood. Sameer, you want to just talk in a little bit about where does research sort of come into this entire process? At what stages does research come in? When does it move out and when does it come back in? Because typically research happening and then someone else just implementing it doesn't make sense, right? You sort of have to validate that research also for it to see it successfully implemented. So if you can talk us a little bit about where research comes in this entire process and when does it move out?
Right. So there's two areas. One is the beginning of the project and one is at the end. So the first step is of course understanding the client's requirements and understanding what kind of information they already have, what are they certain about, and what are the areas that are kind of in the gray area, and also understanding what is the missing information that is needed for the UI UX designers before they can build it out in a way that really covers all the details. So you understand the requirements, you decide what is the types of research that you require. Do you require more qualitative research, that's the missing pieces, or is it more of a quantitative side? You collect and collate that information in as robust manner as possible and build a report in a way that is easily communicative for the UI UX team, so they know exactly which pieces to pick out where and what is applicable for which section. And then the design team and the rest of the team of course takes that information forward and uses it as a guiding point, as a North Star to make decisions across the entire journey, right from the information architecture or sitemap till the entire end process. So that covers sort of the beginning stage of where research would be required for UX research. And then there's the testing phase where once you've built a design and you think it matches what the different users require, you can push it out and perform, either you can perform usability testing, you can perform user testing, you can do A/B testing, various forms of testing basis what's required for the project, and you can see whether what your initial version, what you set out to do, if it's actually accomplishing with the users. Are there areas or small tweaks that are making a very large impact? And overall you can optimize the entire design at a very, very early stage. Especially if you're building a website for the first time, if you've built an entire user flow and there is something fundamentally missing or there's a fundamental error in the user flow, when you conduct user testing, you can change the design at an earlier stage before development. So forgot to mention earlier, the user testing phase will come before the development phase, and then ultimately for the long run you're ending up saving a ton of developmental cost for the client, because a redesign and then redeveloping it is a huge cost, and there's also the cost of missing out on all the revenue or all the clicks you would have earned if it weren't for some of the fundamental areas that were missed out on earlier on. So those are the two areas. You have the beginning stage where you are forming your personas, you're forming your base that represents what are the users and what are their motivations, barriers, pain points, delight factors. And there's the testing phase right before the development on where you test out the design in multiple ways to ensure that everything is optimized and everything is matching the intent of the product itself.
Got it. So you said it's better to spend a bit more time testing that design rather than moving it quickly into development and spending more time and cost. You save up. It's better to spend that additional 1 day on testing it rather than wasting 10 days on redesigning and redeveloping something. Coming to the point of research, and I know you guys have different sort of, your research is a bit more doing consumer research, understanding what are the pain points that they had while going through the website, or what are the kind of, what is it that they would have liked to have on the website. And I know you guys do a bit more about on the analytics front. Can you all talk me through a little bit about the kind of tools that a UI UX designer in research-based tools or analytics-based tools, which kind of tools a designer should have knowledge of using to conduct this kind of research, any kind of research?
Okay. So for design purpose, the tools. So I'm talking about the references websites that I used to refer. That is called awards.com. That I used to refer for the different types of websites. There is a land book references. There is a product disrupt is a website there where we can reference about the UX part कि आज की डेट में क्या क्या चल रहा है, यहाँ आज के flows में क्या क्या चल रहा है. Then I am doing references like main top 5 trending website and top 5 trending apps, because in this industry trending क्या चल रहा है, it's so important कि कौन से टाइप से कहाँ से ट्रेंडिंग हो रहा है. या अगेन यू सी कभी कभी फॉर एग्जांपल इफ ना पहले कोई डिज़ाइन का कुछ स्कोप नहीं था, अभी सडनली देयर इज़ अ मटेरियल डिज़ाइन, एप्पल ह्यूमन इंटरफेस, IBM डिज़ाइन, तो दीज टाइप्स ऑफ डिज़ाइन आर इनकरिंग, तो इसके लिए रेफरेंसिंग करना जरूरी है. एंड दीज टूल्स आई एम यूजिंग फॉर दैट. एंड फॉर द गूगल एनालिटिक फॉर द एनालिटिक आई एम यूजिंग द वन which is better. I think it's a Google Analytics tool.
Just to add to what Sumit's saying about Google Analytics, I think it gives us a fair understanding of how users are interacting with the website itself, what their journey is through the website, where they're dropping off, where they're going ahead, and if it's an e-commerce website, they're purchasing something. So Google Analytics is definitely helpful, and it's great even when a designer understands that, because they're able to then say that, okay, if my bounce rate on X page is very high, then you can break down that page and identify, okay, this is where we're really going wrong, and this is what we can improve and make better, to help, of course, the website's performance.
Yeah. Sameer, any tools that you recommend that a designer should know? Apart from the ones that they mentioned, I know Google Analytics is a very important one. It's essential to know which are your top 5 landing pages, to know where they're spending the most amount of time. But anything from your end that you feel like they should know?
Well, I mean, in the research front, there's plenty of technology for UX research. So things like eye tracking, sort of measuring emotions, that kind of thing. But I don't suppose that will come under the...
no, it could. So, what we can do is we can put down some of the tools here, and we can put down some of the tools that Sumit recommended for inspiration for design. We can, Google Analytics is definitely one of them. There's heat mapping tools that we use, which is Hotjar. There is something called Visualize, which you can use to actually the design that you've created. You can actually put that up, and you can, before getting it coded, you can actually see where the eye movement is going.
So I think you can use that UX camp also for the user research, correct?
Right.
So we put the tools. We put the tools down over here, so that anyone watching this, anyone who's wanting to join the team, they can sort of refer to any of these tools. They can explore them, and they can check them out.
Well, I mean, fundamentally for the research side, the methods that we're really using is sort of quantitative tools, like different kind of forms and surveys that we have. I'm sure there are a bunch of tools for conducting A/B testing, which Sumit will be able to share. We'll be able to share in the description. And in terms of qualitative methods, we're using both focus groups and conducting interviews, and sort of as part of usability testing, watching them go through the UI and go through the different types of screens and pages that have been built. So fundamentally, in order to understand how they're behaving, I think that's the methodology and sort of some of the tools that come with it. But fundamentally, it's the methodology that counts for UX research.
Got it. So moving on to a bit more about now getting into the sitemap creation, the information architecture. Pratik, because you work again more, you work as a project manager, you work with the designers and you work with some of the guys who are strategizing the structure of the website. Do you think it's important for designers to know how to create sitemaps and information architectures, and how helpful is that when they're involved in this process?
Absolutely. So to answer the first part of question, definitely yes, they must know how to create a sitemap and an information architecture. The sitemap basically defines all the pages that you're going to have on your website, and then the information architecture defines what content is going to come under each of these pages. So what they really need to do at this point of time is work closely with the content team as well, any UI UX designer, and basically understand what all content we're looking at for each specific page. And at the end of the day, maybe you want a particular page to tell a story. So the UI UX designer along with the content resource can basically sit together and figure out, okay, this is how we can tell this story on an about us page, maybe, for example, right, wherein you may want to highlight the vision and mission of a company. So it's definitely very important, and then that sets the tone for how your wireframes are going to be, and then in turn your designs are going to be as well.
Got it. Got it. In terms of handoffs, once the designs are done, Sumit, what are your recommendations? How does a designer need to structure the folder, structure the file internally before handing it off to a developer?
So my structure of filing is that if you are using a specific name or a specific client, for example, Schbang is a client. So I am structuring my file in that way कि Schbang में what are the open files and what are the JPEGs. There should be a two folder. In the case if any designer is opening my files out of folder, there should be seen, अच्छा ये open files है, अच्छा in this these are the versions, the homepage versions are the, because for the homepage we are creating 2 to 3 versions, and for internal page we are creating only one version, and they are separate about mobile design. And first of all, mainly is if a designer is handling any file to a developer, there should be a layer naming. Layer naming is an important part, because without a layer naming कुछ नहीं वो कर सकता, because even on a photo if there is a shadow, there is a 10% opacity of shadow if a developer को नहीं दिखता, but and at the same time if a layer name should be specified, अच्छा this is a opacity of this image and all, then the developer can take that opacity with the image, because कभी-कभी क्या करते हैं, there are difference between if you are designing the website and if you are seeing the website. Design वाले website में आपको बहुत अच्छा दिखेगा, because you set the curves and all, because and in the developing stage आपको दिखेगा नहीं, because that designer उसने कुछ गलत नाम दिया होगा या that उसने extract proper नहीं किया होगा.
So looking at the naming structure and the cleanliness of the folder, the layer structure is how you would actually define the quality of a designer, if I had to simply put it. Because that's essentially how well organized they are as a designer. We're sort of just, if I'm going to touch upon a little bit more now, Sumit, this is more for you.
Yes.
What does the team composition of the UI UX team look like? What is the hierarchy? What is the structure?
Okay. So structure of the team composition in Schbang is, one is a head, of course it is a Sohil. After that there are two designers, one is a Sumit and one is a Jeener. And these are the head designers. In that head designer there are multiple types of designers. That in my team there are designers and graphic visualizers also, because graphic visualizer we are used as a creating some types of beautiful designs or beautiful emailer design, because UI designer उनको proper judgment नहीं आता कि अच्छा ये type के emailer में, because in types of you are seeing nowadays कि emailer भी इतना attractive होना चाहिए that on that clicks होने चाहिए. तो some types of हमने designers Schbang में ऐसे divide किए हैं that UI UX also be the part of the design and graphic visualizer is a part of it.
So it's a mix of graphic designers and UI UX designers, and they both support each other in the different work that they do.
In the terms of
and
designing.
what is the kind of work that is expected to be executed by this team?
Okay, so work you are saying. So in Schbang there is a good point is there are no hierarchies. Means position is defined as a he is a junior designer and he is a junior, but actually it's not valuable. So in Schbang, if a junior designer can also work on a sitemap, because why? Because nowadays I am seeing in the colleges and all, students who are actually in a design process, they are creating good type of site maps, wireframe, and they are doing good type of references. But in many companies, they don't get a chance to showcase their work because of their position or hierarchy, that he is a junior designer, that he should work on our icons and all. No, it's not like that. That if he has a talent, in Schbang we can use that talent because अच्छा वो उसको आता है site map of information है का cool वो बना रहे हो because see in the UI UX design industry head से लेके junior तक there are different types of tangent कि उसका दिमाग अलग चलता है इसका दिमाग अलग because even a head designer can also learn from a junior designer and a junior designer can also from a head designer कि what type of work it is and in a team अगर for example if a website is coming or if a there are some different kinds of work. I think websites are there, mobile apps are there. So there for specialized UI UX designer are working on that websites, apps, I think emailers and graphic designer are helping them to create a beautiful banners and all. For example, if there are some types of websites which are colorfully. So UI designer कभी-कभी वहाँ पे थोड़े अटक जाते हैं कि क्या कैसे किया था. Then the graphic designer का role आता है कि what type of color should be there या what type of create should be balanced in that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. In addition to this, what is the responsibility? What is your responsibility? If you can let people know about what is your responsibility as a UI UX lead, and you can then also tell us about what does a day in a life of a UI UX designer look like at Schbang.
Yeah. So responsibility of a UI lead and a designer, they are same. But at the same time कि वो लोग लेने चाहिए. For example, designers जो हैं, they are simply things like कि अच्छा मेरा काम है डिज़ाइन करना. No, it's not like that. तेरा काम है डिज़ाइन करना ऐसा नहीं क्योंकि I am seeing your design doesn't mean कि आप खाली डिज़ाइन करते रहो कुछ भी करो मेरे को चित्र. You look your design कि वहाँ पे क्या है अच्छा मैंने गलती क्या की है. तो in the way कि designer and UI the properties are same. They are looking the same concept but जिनको लेना वो लेते हैं जिनको लेना नहीं लेते हैं एंड इन UI UX देयर आर मोस्ट ऑफ ऑल वी आर वर्किंग विद अ BD टीम में कैसा चलता है इन अ डिज़ाइन टाइप ऑफ व्यू वी आर चेकिंग द डिज़ाइन कि कैसे क्या बना रहे हैं लोग एंड मोस्ट ऑफ ऑल मेंटरिंग द डिज़ाइनर्स कि अच्छा सो देयर आर मैनी डिज़ाइनर हु आर वर्किंग ऑन अ मिनिमलिस्टिक सो वो आगे नहीं जाते हैं वो उनको पता है कि एक बॉक्स में इतना ही डिज़ाइन करना है वाई आप आगे जाओ ना सर्टेनली क्या होगा कि स्टेक होल्डर से बात करना पड़ेगा या किससे बात करना दैट इज़ माई जॉब कि उनको मैं बताऊंगा अच्छा दिस टाइप ऑफ डिज़ाइनर इज़ अ गुड वो लोग अपने बैरियर्स नहीं होते कभी कभी वो लोग फिक्स्ड हो जाते हैं कि मेरे को ये डिज़ाइन सो वी आर मेंटेनिंग दैट कि अच्छा आगे चलो वी विल सी कि अच्छा आपका डिज़ाइन कैसा है या वी विल सी अकॉर्डिंग टू क्लाइंट कि ये लोग पिच कर सकते हैं हम लोग डिज़ाइन सो देयर आर ब्यूटीफुल जिप्स नाउ डेज आर क्रिएटिंग सो मेनी ऑफ द डिज़ाइनर दे डोंट डू जिप ऑल्सो कि उनको पता है अच्छा ये बहुत काम है बट if you mentor कि अच्छा ये करो because
so the role of a UI UX lead is basically to mentor the designers, be a part of the business development process while pitching to new clients, driving the plan that they've put together for that particular project, ensuring that whichever respective designer is working on it, so ensuring that that's on track.
That website is responsive now. Nowadays, clients are more focusing on the website because focusing on mobile. अच्छा ये mobile design नहीं है, no, ये कैसे आ गया design? So mainly UI UX lead is mostly depend on कि website जो जा रही है वो most of all वो mobile responsive होनी चाहिए. This is the main I look for these aspects कि ये चीज़ होनी चाहिए according to that. डिजाइनर के टर्म के थ्रू UI UX लीड्स
मोबाइल फर्स्ट हमेशा होना चाहिए ऑलमोस्ट 90% ऊपर से सब मोबाइल पे ही जा रही है वेबसाइट पे what is an ideal day of a UI UX designer at Schbang?
So ideal day of
how does the day start, how does the day end?
So ideal day of a UI UX designer that 10:30 AM he should open Trello. So on Trello board there are tasks assigned to a designers कि अच्छा this designer is working upon that this type of task और so according to that उसको अपना day plan करना पड़ता है कि अच्छा so I am designing a website and all so वो designer को according to day plan करना पड़ता है in this between there are meetings and multiple what should I say
interactions
mentorship also कि अच्छा ये टाइप की मीटिंग है अच्छा we have to mentor this और या टीम मीट्स हो रहे हैं तो they want to take part in as well that also because डिज़ाइन करके कुछ फ़ायदा नहीं है, डिज़ाइन के साथ सब कुछ करेगा तो उसको पता चलेगा कि एक्चुअल यूआई लीड जब भी वो बनेगा तो क्या टाइप के सर्फेसिस आएंगे.
Got it. So the day starts with Trello पे everything is mapped out. Usually the designer knows what's happening.
What's happening.
Even the next day. So there it's planned out for the next couple of days so that they don't know. The designer always knows what they have to work on. They have a heads up of the kind of work that they need to do for the next day, so that even if they have to do some referencing, some ideation, they need to do some brainstorming, they're able to do that a day in advance. And then through the day, it's sort of interaction with various teams, with someone like you and Gina, they're interacting with, sharing their designs, getting their point of view on things. And you then end the day also with a Trello to sort of see where we are on that and update on the stuff. Nice. So we're sort of nearing the end of this UI UX design podcast. 3 non-negotiable things you think that a UI UX designer should have?
So one is curiosity and empathy. So
Nice.
Because if a designer doesn't have curiosity, वो आगे कभी नहीं जा सकता कि because curiosity एक ऐसी चीज़ है कि अच्छा for example I'm giving you example कि अच्छा प्रतीक ने ये डिज़ाइन लाया, प्रतीक is a client and he said मेरे को ये ऐसा ही डिज़ाइन चाहिए. अच्छा ओके ऐसा ही डिज़ाइन चाहिए ठीक है, बट क्यों चाहिए, वाई ये क्यों ऐसा बोल रहा है ये डिज़ाइन करने, इससे अच्छा भी हम लोग बना सकते हैं. बट क्यूरियोसिटी जब तक नहीं होगी ना तब तक उसको पता नहीं चलेगा कि मैं कितना डीप डाइव करूँ उसमें. ये क्यूरियोसिटी इज़ द मेन इंपॉर्टेंट. एंड सेकंड पार्ट इज़ एम्पैथी कि अगर उसने डिज़ाइन तो बना ली बट एट द सेम टाइम अच्छा डिज़ाइन है बट यूज़र कहाँ देख रहा है, अच्छा मेरी डिज़ाइन के जो गोल्स है वो दे पा रहा हूँ कि नहीं मैं उनको. बिकॉज इवन इज अ स्मॉल CTA प्ले बहुत मेजर रोल करता है बट है इतना छोटा बटन बट उसका आके जा रहे हैं कि नहीं, दीज आर द सॉलिड कलर्स हैं कि नहीं, मतलब proportional that this button is good or not. Because in this empathy you are judging that user क्या देख रहा है उनको कि अच्छा that प्रतीक मोबाइल चलाते थे राइट हैंड साइड ज़्यादा यूज़ करें, अच्छा we should use this part of area for a designing part, मैं अपने डिज़ाइन में ये सब incorporate कर सकता हूँ. So these types of various empathy you can gain from that experience of the मीन्स जो अलग अलग टेस्टेबिलिटी होंगे या यूज़र रिसर्च में टेस्ट वहाँ पे उसको पता चलेगा. एंड सेकेंड पॉइंट इज कम्युनिकेशन स्किल कि इफ़ अगर वो अपनी डिज़ाइन किसी को समझा नहीं सकता ना तो बिकॉज उसको अपनी डिज़ाइन समझाना सबको आना चाहिए. अच्छा सो whenever he goes on a client call there are many different types of question they ask client ask from us कि अच्छा ये ऐसा क्यों तुम लोग कर रहे हो, अच्छा why this 12 grid column क्यों फुल क्यों नहीं बना सकते, तो there should be answerable. एंड वो है ना डिज़ाइन के नॉलेज में थ्रू है ना उसको ज़्यादा पता होना चाहिए. अच्छा ये ऐसा बोल रहा है बट मैं ऐसा ही रहूँगा, क्यों रहूँगा, वो रीजनिंग होना चाहिए. बिकॉज नाउअडेज एक पॉइंट है इफ़ अ फोल्डर आई एम डबल क्लिकिंग ऑन फोल्डर तो सबको पता है फोल्डर ओपन होगा. अगर सिंगल सिलेक्ट किया तो इट सिलेक्ट हो जाता है फोल्डर. अगर ये UX पूरा हम लोग चेंज करेंगे देयर शुड बी अ गुड रीज़न, उसको डिज़ाइन के लिए भी गुड रीज़न होना चाहिए कि वाई शुड आई चेंजिंग दिस और मेरा रीज़न क्या है नहीं करने का.
Got it. I'd also add to this, I think having a good sense of color combinations and selection of fonts.
So mainly it should be a Google fonts. So now our designer they are using random fonts. So after they are saying acha these are not codable and not, they should use Google fonts. So tell me one thing Sameer कि for example if we are generating a design कि हम लोग एक डिज़ाइन बनाते हैं. So main part तो ये है जो हम लोग जब भी डिज़ाइन बनाते हैं it's not about client. क्लाइंट देखता है, क्लाइंट को पता है क्लाइंट क्या बोलेगा, अच्छा ये ठीक है ये ठीक है. इट्स नॉट अबाउट क्लाइंट को अगर देखने के लिए बना होगा तो उसको जो वो एक्चुअली जो एक्सपेक्ट कर रहा है कि मेरे पास ये इतनी ट्रैफिक आनी चाहिए या इतना अमाउंट का कुछ होना चाहिए तो वो एक्सपेक्ट नहीं है. जब भी हम लोग यही पॉइंट है जब भी हम लोग रिसर्च करते हैं why don't we do a real जो रियल पर्सन नीड है, बिकॉज दैट डिज़ाइनर इज गो फॉर अ रियल पर्सन. अगर मैं क्लाइंट हूँ मैं डिज़ाइन बनाऊंगा मैं खुद नहीं देखूंगा रोज, वो सामने वाला ही देखेगा रोज. और वो अगर सामने वाला रोज देखता है तो उसके एक्सपर्टीज में हम लोग रिसर्च क्यों नहीं, बिकॉज हम लोग मैंने ज़्यादातर देखा वी आर डूइंग लाइक अ क्वान्टिटेटिव रिसर्च. जैसे हमने खुद का ही एक पर्सोना बना दिया, अच्छा दिस टाइप ऑफ पर्सोनास आर देयर, बट एक्चुअली में हम लोग जो रियल जो हैं उनको एक्चुअली मेरे हिसाब से ज़्यादा उनको करना चाहिए.
Right. So I think your point about people designers sort of quickly create personas so that they can refer to those, but then those personas are based on what they think and not actually what is in reality. So the way personas are supposed to be built is that you design a, let's say, interview or focus group research where you're conducting qualitative research, And let's say you have different audience segments. So let's say if I had to define an audience segment, we have maybe a custom type of users basis the type of client. You have you account for demographics, you account for locations. So you have that sort of a variation of different audience segments. In terms of UX research, sort of a minimum number to accomplish in order to, it's a heuristic in terms of the minimum number of people you should interview per segment ends up being 5. That kind of covers the variations of people. And the concept of a persona is it's an archetype. It's a sort of fiction that's large. I mean that accounts for various types of people, various types of behaviors that are relevant for the design, relevant for the function of the product. So you have sort of an accumulated sense of across the different types of people that you have interviewed, what are the predominant behaviors that define their mindset. And the more people that you interview, the more extremes that you're accounting for, the more variations that you have in personas that are relevant, the more rich your personas become, and the more backing you have in terms of real life scenarios. Connecting with your point about empathy, curiosity and communication. So it ties into that empathy and communication piece. So somebody, let's say if you are designing for a senior citizen, let's say a female senior citizen and you're a male 22-year-old, your connection with that audience is going to be very directly very limited unless you have research to give you a stronger sense of empathy as to how they might think, and you have real life scenarios to connect them through. And so then that ties into communication in terms of, let's say if you want to communicate to a client why this product is great for a female senior citizen, you can walk them through a scenario that was actually present in the qualitative research and communicate how that flow matches the real life scenario of that type of user. So that's the power that personas can have if done correctly, as compared to, let's say, created personas that just built so you have something very very quickly.
I remember us doing this research for Raw Pressery, where we were trying to understand why someone was not coming back and buying their juices again and again. And one of the key highlights out of that research was saying, hey, you know what, I'm coming back, but I have to go through that entire process again and again. That is A. B, can you guys not just have sort of a subscription model that can come to me every now and then? And apart from some of the UI elements where they said, hey, you know what, I didn't even notice this or I didn't even notice that. So sort of, I mean, we interviewed, I remember us interviewing various sort of age groups, various people from, either it was someone ordering for someone else or either it was someone who was really senior who was ordering. And there was multiple insights that we took away from it that allowed us to sort of deliver a better output towards the end. So yeah, I agree that it's important to constantly keep staying closer to your user. As a designer, you got to try getting as close as possible to your user who you're designing for. So
and one other element that user UX research ends up bringing out is, when you're a UX designer, you're not just looking at sort of opening the website and then closing the website. You're looking at the entire user experience, and then you take into account the impact of branding, the impact of the offline, let's say, experience that they have created, and it becomes an interconnected event. It's not just you've logged into the website and you've checked out. If you look at an e-commerce flow, it's also about the impact that the brand has on you, the impact that the products that they're selling has on you, the long-term experience that they're having with not just the website, but if they have a retail presence, and the interaction between the retail presence and the website. And it gives you an understanding of, let's say, if you're looking at the analytics, the impact of the world beyond just that screen, and the impact of the world beyond the screen on the user experience that somebody is having on the website itself. And when you look at it from that interconnected perspective, you're really able to diagnose what's really the issue with some of the areas that are amiss, and what's making this experience whole when it's really running successfully within the website or within the app and beyond the website and the app.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in for the podcast. I'd like to thank Prateek, Sumit, and Samir for this insightful session. I look forward to having you guys.